Fireside chat!
The first Gulf War, also known as the Persian Gulf War, Gulf War I, the Kuwait War, or the First Iraq War, was a conflict involving a coalition army of over 35 countries led by the U.S. in reaction to the actions of Iraq regarding the annexation of Kuwait. The First Gulf War began on August 2nd, 1990, and on February 28, 1991. In total, it resulted in 292 coalition deaths, between 20,000 and 35,000 Iraqi deaths.
In July 1990, Iraq threatened to use military force against Kuwait, citing Kuwait's disregard of the OPEC quota. They moved 30,000 troops to the border between Kuwait and themselves, stating that Kuwait's policies were inspired by America to undermine Arabs' interest in security, as U.S. dependence on the Middle East for oil was well known. Although Saddam Hussein would attempt last-minute negotiations, called the Jeddah talks, all would fail and Iraq would invade on August 2nd, 1990. Although the specifics of the war aren't important, know that at the time, Iraq had the fourth largest army in the world and would effectively take control of Kuwait within 2 days, decimating the Kuwaiti military. Saddam Hussein would set up a puppet regime called the Provisional Government of Free Kuwait before later installing his cousin Ali al-Majid on August 8th. The most important part of this war was Operation Desert Storm, which, as indicated, you should know all the specifics of Operation Desert Storm because all of it will be tested. The UN Security Council, led by the US, condemned the actions and placed economic sanctions on Iraq. Iraq would offer to withdraw troops if all foreign troops in Palestine and Israel were withdrawn, as well as the dismantling of Israel's weapons of mass destruction. The US said no, refusing to negotiate with Iraq, and would issue an ultimatum through the UN, stating that Iraq had until January 15, 1991 to withdraw, or they would utilize all necessary means to force them out. The US was fearful of an Iraqi invasion of Saudi Arabia next, whom the US heavily relied on for oil. Iraqi control of Saudi Arabian, Kuwaiti, and Iraqi oil fields would be disastrous for the US. The US cited human rights violations and Iraq's use of chemical weapons as reason for invading, and would do so since with a coalition of 35 countries, the largest since World War II. The forces would start invasion on January 16, 1991. It was made out of US and Kuwaiti forces, with other countries hesitant to commit troops. However, the coalition's technological superiority and air support would result in the liberation of Kuwait on February 28th. A ceasefire would later be signed. The president at the time, President George H.W. Bush, would be criticized for not pushing further and trying to overthrow Saddam Hussein by invading Baghdad. But Bush just argued that such action would cause unnecessary lives, and many coalition countries would not have supported such actions. Ironically, this is exactly what happened during the Second Gulf War. Instead, Bush authorized the CIA to try and begin an internal coup to overthrow Saddam, but would ultimately fail, like the Bay of Pigs.
The Second Gulf War, also known as the Iraq War, the major military campaign of which was Operation Freedom, involved a US-led coalition who invaded Iraq to overthrow the regime of Saddam Hussein. The war itself started March 19, 2003, and was officially ended May 1, 2003. However, conflicts in the region continued until December 18, 2011. On the American side, casualty rates for deaths were specifically 4,471, while on the other side, for the Iraq, was 174,000. The major Second Gulf War, or the Iraq War, the main military campaign of which was Operation Freedom, involved a US-led coalition which invaded Iraq to overthrow the regime of Saddam Hussein. The major causes of the Iraq War started in the 1980s with the arming of Iraq. As a result of the Iran-Iraq War, NATO lost a key ally in Iran, and as a result, Western companies, such as American and German companies, sold technology to Iraq, to which they had access to chemical, missile, and nuclear weapons. The Bush administration argued that Iraq possessed chemical, biological, and weapons of mass destruction as a result, and that Saddam was harboring and supporting Al-Qaeda. They sought to end dictatorship in the country and bring democracy. As in 2002, Iraq stated in a declaration that it had no weapons of mass destruction. Do that again and I'm gonna hit you, okay?
Dude, okay, chill.
Alright, sorry, where was I? Alright, this was all in response to a 2002 demand by Bush that Iraq would stop production of any weapons of mass destruction. As a result, this caused Iraq to declare that it had no weapons of mass destruction. However, the administration still was under the belief that they did, which prompted, after the 9/11 attacks, to declare war and an invasion of Iraq.
On March 19, 2003, a coalition of forces including the US, the UK, Australia, and Poland initiated war on Iraq. The coalition forces were able to topple Hussein's regime and take Iraq's major cities within just 3 weeks, and they had very few casualties. On May 1st, 2003, Bush declared the end of major combat operations, but the insurgency continued and intense guerrilla warfare continued, resulting in many deaths. After an intense manhunt, Saddam Hussein was found and arrested without resistance. He was tried for brutal crimes against his people, including mass killings. In November 2006, Hussein was found guilty of crimes against humanity and sentenced to death by hanging, but after an unsuccessful appeal, he was finally executed December 30th, 2006. In June 2004, the provisional government transferred power to the Iraqi interim government, and in 2005, the Iraqi people selected 275 members for an Iraqi National Assembly. A new constitution was also ratified that October. There was lots of opposition to the Second Gulf War and protests around the world. Many people believed that it was illegal and violated the UN Charter, and they also thought it was illegal because they attacked without UN's approval. People also argued against the rationale for going to war, and they did not believe that there was a supposed link between the 9/11 attacks and the Iraqi government, and they also questioned the weapons of mass destruction that Bush claimed that the Iraqi government had. The Bush administration lost a lot of popularity because of this. There were also many unintended consequences of the war, such as the armed reactionary groups such as ISIS that were formed during this war.
Hey, oh wait, shoot.